Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm back with 5 all new Valentine's Day decor DIYs. Each project in today's video is budget friendly and really easy to create. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Now let's get started. For DIY number 1, I'm going to be using the sign from Dollar Tree, and the first thing that I needed to do was just peel off the piece that was on the front of the sign since I'm not using it. And then I'm also going to be using some felt roses that I picked up from Dollar General last year. All of the roses did have a little sticker on the bottom of them, but I went ahead and just peeled them all off. And then I started placing my 2 rose colors inside of my square frame, just to see how I wanted to place them before I started attaching them. And I did, like I said, use these 2 colors, the darker pink and then the lighter pink. Then I decided that I wanted to have the frame of this piece painted. So to paint it, I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did do 2 coats of this paint. Once the paint was dry, I then started to attach all of my roses, and I did hot glue them down. And I just went between the 2 colors. I do the dark pink first, then the light pink, then the dark pink, then the light pink, and I just continued to do those steps until I had roses completely covering the inside of my square. Next, I'm adding some Spanish moss in between all of my roses. To do that, I would place hot glue in the spaces between the roses and then just press in the Spanish moss using the end of a paintbrush. I continued to do that until I had all of the spaces covered in the moss. Then for the last step, I used my scissors and just trimmed away all of the extra moss. It does look super messy, but in the end, when all of it's trimmed away, it looks beautiful. And this is my rose piece all finished. This was such an easy and budget-friendly project, and I love all of these colors together, and it looks perfect on one of my tables. Now for DIY number 2. For this one, I'm using these faux Valentine books from Dollar Tree this year. And the first thing I'm doing is just removing the ribbon from around the books. And they are really cute already, just like they are, but I did want to make them my own. So I'm just painting them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did do 2 coats of this paint. After that paint was all dry, I did want to add some detail, so I'm taking that rich black color on a paintbrush and just very lightly painting this in all of the grooves of my books and then around all of the outside edges of the books as well. This is just giving it some more detail and adding a little bit of a distressed look to them. I'm also going to be using some unfinished wood letters to spell out the words hugs and kisses. These are, I believe, from Joann Fabrics, and then the small wooden hearts that I'm using are from Dollar Tree. And for all of my letters to spell out hugs and kisses, I am painting them with my folk art chalk paint in the color Rich Black. Then for all 3 of my wooden hearts, I'm painting them with my folk art paint in the color Imperial. Then it was time to start putting everything together. I'm doing the word hugs on the very top right hand side of my faux book. Then the center one, I'm doing all 3 hearts, and then on the very bottom, I'm doing the word kisses. I'm getting them all arranged exactly how I want them to be before I start hot gluing each one of my letters and my hearts down. Next, I'm adding some of this, a really pretty Valentine's Day trim. It's basically just string with wooden hearts and beads on it. I'm attaching it on the left side of my books. I'm just wrapping it around like 3 times. You can see me here. I'm hot gluing the very end of the string on the bottom of my books. That was a huge mistake. I should have done it on the back of the faux books instead of the bottom, because when I'm gluing it on the bottom, it's raising it up a little bit on the bottom, so it's not going to sit flat when I place it on a table. So what I ended up having to do is just use like one of those little furniture like padding things that you put on the end of a chair. I placed one of those on the other side of the bottom of my books, and then they sat flat. But just keep that in mind that you want to use the hot glue on the back of the books and not the bottom. Then for the last step, I just added a small piece of greenery to the top of my books. Here are my books all finished. I love how these turned out. Another super easy, budget-friendly project, and this one goes a little bit better with my decor than the ones that came from Dollar Tree. Now moving right on into DIY number 3. For this one, I'm using one of these unfinished wood frame pieces from Hobby Lobby. This one is in the size 5x7. And the first thing I'm going to be doing to this one is using my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut. I do like to apply it with a small paintbrush so that I can get it in all of the wood grooves. And then once I have it painted on, and then I just use an old rag to wipe away the excess. Once that was all dry, I'm then using some painter's tape, and I'm placing the tape at the very top of my frame, and then I'm placing another piece of tape directly underneath my first piece of tape, and then a third piece of tape directly underneath my second piece of tape. I then went back and removed the second piece of tape, and now it's all ready for me to start painting. For the 2 open spaces, I'm using the color Prominent Pink from Folk Art, and I did do 2 different coats of this paint just so that everything was covered really nicely. Once the paint dried, I then removed the 2 pieces of painter's tape, and then I used 2 new pieces of painter's tape to apply over the prominent pink colors that I just painted on. I'm using tape over these so that I don't mess up the colors that I've already painted on. So then the next color that I'm going to be doing in the 2 open spaces is also from Folk Art, and it's in the color Vintage Victorian. And this is just a really nice pastel pink color. Then once that paint has dried, I'm removing all of my tape. Then I wanted to add a little bit of detail in between all of the stripes that I just painted on. So I'm using a really small paintbrush with my Waverly paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just painting on these white colored lines in between all of the stripes. My lines that I'm painting on are not perfect, but I think it looks a little bit more rustic this way. I did want this piece to have a little bit more of a rustic look, so I did end up taking some more of that plaster color on a Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I just dry brushed that color randomly all over those pink stripes that I painted in the back, and I think that this toned those colors down a little bit and gave this more of a rustic, romantic feel. For this project, I'm also using some wood letters. I'm using 2 X's and 2 O's for XOXO, and these ones I believe are from Joann Fabrics, and for all of the letters, I'm painting them with the Waverly paint in Plaster. I'm then attaching all of my letters on the bottom right hand side of my sign, and I did them saying XOXO, and to attach them, I used hot glue on the back side. Next, I thought it would be cute to add some jute to the top of the sign, so I'm using 2 strands of the jute, and I placed hot glue on the ends of the strands and then just stuck them to the second stripe. I'm then going to be using some of these white felt hearts from Dollar Tree and pressing them over top of the jute, and I'm having the jute go in kind of like a half moon shape across the left top hand side of my sign. And I am going to be using 4 of these felt stickers. I just cut the jute down to size, like I said, so that I could have it going in like a half moon shape at the very top left hand side, and then every so often I would place the felt sticker with a little bit of jute space in between each one. I hope that made sense. The felt stickers were really thin and see-through, so I ended up going back through and adding a second one over top, but this time I left the paper backing on the heart instead of peeling it off, and I just hot glued that right over top of the first heart that I've already attached, just so that they would look a little bit thicker and not as thin, and I ended up loving the way that it looked when it was all finished. Again, super easy, budget friendly, and it is just such a great piece to add for your tabletop decor this Valentine's Day. Now for DIY number 4. For this one, I'm using this like paper cardboard like mailbox from Hobby Lobby. It was in the Valentine's Day section this year, and the first thing I'm going to be doing to it is painting the outside of it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 coats of this paint. Then for the flag part of my mailbox, I painted that with my Folk Art paint in the color Vintage Victorian. I did have to do 2 coats of paint to get everything all covered up. And then I did go back through and end up painting the lid or front of my mailbox with that same Vintage Victorian color. I just thought it would be really cute to have it the same color as my flag. For this project, I'm also using these wooden letters to spell out the word mail. These ones are from Joann Fabrics, and I'm going to be painting all of the letters with my rich black paint from Folk Art. I'm also using these 3 unfinished wooden hearts from Dollar Tree, and for all 3 of these, I'm painting them with the Waverly paint in plaster. I'm then placing all of my letters to spell out the word mail on the very front lid of my mailbox, and then all 3 of my wooden hearts above my word mail. Once I have them all centered and placed where I want them to be, I'm using some hot glue on the back side of the letters and the hearts to attach them to the very front lid of my mailbox. Next, I'm adding some detail to the front of my mailbox. I'm stringing a piece of jute around the very front lid right above the word mail and below my wooden hearts. I strung it across the lid, and then on the inside of the lid, I just hot glued the 2 ends of my jute down and then just cut off any excess jute that was left over. Next, I'm adding some of this white ribbon trim. This is from the Target Dollar Spot that I got a couple years ago, but I thought it would be really cute on this piece. I'm attaching it above the jute that I just added, and to attach it, again, I'm using the hot glue and just doing the same thing. I wrapped it around the front of the mailbox lid and then attached it to the very inside of the lid. Then I'm adding a second piece of jute right over top of that white trim that I just added, doing the same steps, just attaching it to the very inside of my lid and then just cutting off any of the excess jute. I recently found these really cute flowers at Hobby Lobby, and I thought they would be perfect to add to the center of all 3 of my hearts on my mailbox. So I just cut the stems off of them, and then I'm attaching all 3 of these pink little flowers right in the center of my hearts using some hot glue. Next, I'm using this Love stencil. I've had this for a while. It came in a pack of stencils from Michaels. So I'm just peeling it off, and then I'm attaching it to the very center of the side of my mailbox. Once I have it all on, I'm then going to be using my rich black paint color from Folk Art, and I'm painting that only over the word love. Then for the heart on the stencil and then all of the stems on the side, I'm using my Folk Art paint in the color Vintage Victorian. After the paint was all dry, I then removed the stencil from the side of my mailbox. Then, of course, I wanted to add even more detail, so I'm using some of these small greenery pieces that I had in my stash, and I'm using some hot glue to attach 2 of them going along the very top rim of my mailbox lid. I'm then attaching another one of these small pink flowers to my mailbox flag, and then I thought it would be super cute to add some of these little lips from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be using 4 of them for this project, and I did remove the stickers that were on the backs of all of the lips, and I'm painting all 4 of my lips with my Vintage Victorian paint color. At first I was just going to do 3 of the lips, but you'll see at the end I did end up adding a 4th one. Once the paint was dry, I added 1 lip to the side of the mailbox with the flag, and then I did a couple of them, one on the top of the word love on the left hand side, one on the bottom on the right hand side, and then this is where I ended up adding a 4th one. I thought it just looked kind of too plain above the word love on the right hand side, so this is where I added the 4th one. And here is my Valentine mailbox all finished. I absolutely love how this one turned out. This one is still budget friendly, even though it does have a lot of steps to create this piece, but I definitely think it's worth it in the end. Now for the 5th and final DIY today. For this one, I'm using this wooden frame from Hobby Lobby. This is a 5x7, just like the other one that I used in a different DIY in today's video. I'm doing the same thing. I'm painting on my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut, and then once I have it painted on, I'm just removing the excess with an old rag, and I did also stain the back side of this. Then for the inside of this piece, I'm painting it with the Waverly paint in the color Plaster, and I just did 1 paint on the inside. Once that was drying, I went ahead and started getting all of my letters ready. I am using letters A through Z except for an O. I am going to be using this small wooden heart instead of the letter O. For all of my letters, besides the letters I and U and then my heart, I'm going to be painting all of the other letters with the folk art paint in the color Rich Black. Then for the letters I, the heart that I'm using, and the letter U, I'm painting all of those with my folk art paint in the color Imperial. After the paint was all dry, I then started placing all of my letters on my wood frame. For the first line, I did the letters A through E. Then for the second line underneath those, I did the letters F through J. Then for the third line, I did the letters K through P. Then for the fourth line, I did the letters Q through U. And then I did the letters V through Z on the very last line. Once I had them all centered and the way I wanted them to be, I hot glued each one of the letters down onto my frame. And this is my alphabet I Love You Valentine's picture all finished. This one was inspired by a piece that I did see at Hobby Lobby this year, and I knew that I could recreate it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos. And as always, I would love to know which project from today's video was your favorite. Thank you so much for watching.